We're back with Dr. Heather Exner-Pirot. She's a senior fellow at the Macdonald-Laurier Institute talking critical mineral supply chain. Heather, you just mentioned this idea of having a strategic reserve for Canadian critical minerals. Would this have to be coordinated? Can this be something that Canada can do solo, or should it be coordinated with other countries like the US and Australia and other allies?
Absolutely, it should be coordinated, and that's the heavy lift. And I know, there's a long Financial Times article from some colleagues of mine arguing for this. People are talking about the United States. An Australian think tank, sister think tank, the Macdonald-Laurier Institute, put out a paper on this also. So people are starting to think this way. Japan already has some, strategic reserves of critical minerals, Korea, but we do not want each other competing. We saw that happen with LNG, competing against each other, driving the price out, pricing the global south out. So it'd be much better if we had a coordinated approach, not least also because unlike oil, Canada is 100% self-sufficient in oil and natural gas. No one is 100% self-sufficient in critical minerals. We all need a couple dozen different kinds of critical minerals. We all need it for each other. We all want it from the lowest cost producer with the highest grades. So it absolutely makes sense to start coordinating it. I do think there is an opportunity, though, for Canada to take a lead on this, that we do have incredible mining expertise on the financial side, on the production side, and to not always put the burden on the United States, to come up with these ideas, to implement them, to figure out the how would you actually organize this so that you're not undermining the market, that you are creating some certainty, reducing that volatility. So this is where I think Canada, I think probably also our colleagues in Australia could get together, figure out the best mechanisms to implement a strategic reserve that doesn't undermine the market and maximizes that value to all of our citizens.
You mentioned you attended PDAC, the Prospectors and Developers Association of Canada annual jamboree, if I can call it that, in Toronto. This is obviously something that you probably heard said over and over again at that meeting, but it's just so dang hard for Canadian miners to obtain investment. Is that still the current state of things? And if so, why, and what can be done about it?
Yeah, great question, because I think for a lot of Canadians, we are just thinking, oh, we have all this demand. Everyone's going to be building mines. Now that we need it, we will just build it. And that's not what's happening. So I think miners are suffering from kind of once bitten, twice shy from the investment community. We did see a boom and a huge bust cycle, around 2013, 2014. A lot of people lost money on mining. The sector has not been producing good returns for the last decade. And so people are reluctant to go into mining. The long timelines, we know in Canada, the average to start a new mine from exploration to production is 17.9 years. In a high interest rate environment, high capital costs, that's a killer timeline. The money is just sitting there. You could be putting it into tech, you could be putting it into government bonds, frankly, and could be getting some better returns. And so we have seen, we say the cure to, low prices, there's still low prices. And I fear very much the volatility and the boom that we are going to now face and the impacts that will have. But investors are still looking at mining with a very skeptical eye. Governments need to improve the regulatory burden. They need to improve the timelines to start getting more investment to be attracted to the sector.
Yeah, and that's the key, isn't it? To create the environment in which these mining operations can gain access to capital, or at least not just Chinese capital. Is that right?
Exactly. And that's where, I like to see a free market. I like to see capitalism. It is overcorrecting from its mistakes in the past, which is why I do see in the next few years a window of opportunity for governments to step in, provide some support, maybe be that buyer of last resort, buy those reserves that it will be able to sell. It's an asset that it can sell in the future, but stepping in where I think the free markets are right now failing from a security perspective. This has a huge security implication. We can't just let the market, control all of our supply chain as much as we would like it to. And so I think there's a good case to be made in favor, that protects taxpayers, protects citizens, protects businesses to start, again, avoiding the worst impacts of the boom and bust cycle.
Yeah, and that's your point, isn't it? That this is a national security matter. So it's not just a market situation where you can let the market decide everything.
China is certainly not letting the market decide everything.
There is no market.
That is what we have to. Russia has not been letting the market decide everything. The world is not flat. You would hope that you could just have globalization and perfect free trade. The world in 2024 is not looking that way. And so we do have to have some sense of what are the national security implications of these markets. We saw after COVID what happens when supply chains go awry. This is not something that I think you can just let the invisible hand take 100% care of.
We're going to return with our guest, Dr. Heather Exner-Pirot, after these breaks. Please stay with us. We'll be right back.